If you're following me on Twitter, I am a supporter of Israel. I believe that the Jewish people have a right to self-determination just like every other people, including the Palestinian people, by the way. And I've been hearing a lot of crazy stuff and misinformation. I've been sort of disappointed by people on my side of the aisle because it seems to me that Israel is the one country in that part of the world that stands up for all the things that we talk about here all the time in terms of women's rights and gay rights and economic equality and science and medical marijuana and all kinds of other stuff. But before we get into any of that, and I know the Nazis are already commenting on YouTube, love you guys, I want to throw up a map of the Middle East. So I Googled map of the Middle East, and here's what came up. So this is the first map of the Middle East. If you just Google map of the Middle East, this is the first thing that comes up. Now, people seem to think that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the source of all the world's problems, and it's a huge thing that is causing consternation all over the place. Now, what are we really talking about? Guys, do you know where Israel is there? Because that's the Middle East. Well, it doesn't say Israel on there. Do you know where it might be on there by any chance?
I happen to know where it is, but it is just a real little cashew-sized sliver right there on the coast.
Right, so that little tiny thing between Syria and Egypt. Now again, this is the first map when you Google map of the Middle East. So then I wanted to zoom in on it, so I clicked it. So then here we go with the second one. And then it actually zooms you out, but at least you can, when you zoom in, you zoom
not making it any clearer.
That's
this is really a criticism of Google.
I'm really making this about Google. Okay, so there it is. Now, if you look in the center of the thing, a little bit above Egypt, to the right, you can see Israel, and you can't even fit one letter of the word Israel on the map. Now, yes, that means Gaza and the West Bank are even smaller than that, but that's just where I wanted to start, to kind of show everybody that when we're talking about this area of the world, that we're talking about this tiny, ridiculously tiny piece of land, and maybe that's what makes the real estate all the more valuable. But I have a feeling that people seem to think that it's this massive, ever-expanding country. Okay, so I'm going to do just 1 minute sort of defense of Israel. So, you know, there was something called the partition plan, the UN partition plan in 1947, and this is where the UN said we're going to give 2 states to 2 people. The Jews said yes, the Arabs said no, and then launched a war. And had there not been an Israeli win in the war, there would have been a second Holocaust right there. This is simply a fact. Then in 2005, so I'm going to just kind of jump all over the place, and that's it. So 2005, the Israelis left Gaza. They left altogether. Not one Jew there. Again, Hitler would have loved the place. There was no blockade, by the way. But then for 2 years, Hamas won an election. They ended up having a bloody coup over Fatah. So Mahmoud Abbas, who's the president of the Palestinian Authority, he literally does not step foot in Gaza because he's afraid he would get killed. So think about that. They've been negotiating over this land where one of the guys negotiating is afraid to step in part of the land that he's supposed to control. That's a bit of a problem. Then Hamas took over. They were importing rockets, firing rockets, and then the blockade happened. And by the way, the blockade is also happening from Egypt. In many cases, much worse from Egypt because they're not letting anything in. Israel is supplying Wi-Fi and electricity and food and supplies and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So people always talk about apartheid. Now, apartheid, there are 12 members, Israeli Arab members of the parliament in Israel, fully equal citizens. There's also an Israeli Supreme Court justice, Israeli Arab Supreme Court justice. In Lebanon, by the way, an Arab country, Palestinians are not allowed to have about 60 jobs, 60 white-collar jobs, including certain teaching jobs and lawyers and things of that nature. Jordan, which is anywhere from 50 to 80% Palestinian, they're not allowed to run for certain parts of office because the king, who's supposed to be this great Western guy, he knows that they'll just take over if he lets them have equality. They've also been kept in, Palestinians are kept in refugee camps in Syria. By the way, 2,000 Palestinians were killed in Syria in the last 2 years, starved in the Yarmouk refugee camp. Nobody really talks about that. You know, and then everyone talks about 1967, that this is all about 1967, an occupation that started in 1967. Again, a war that was launched on Israel. Now, maybe they shouldn't have taken any land after that, and they should have said, you know what, we can't take land. It's not the right thing to do. I think that's a perfectly legitimate argument. That's not really how any other country in the world works, but I think that's a certainly fine argument. But the idea that this started in 1967, I'm pretty sure they didn't want the Jews there before that. So there's that. So basically what I think this is really about is not whether the Palestinians can have a state. The Israelis would give them a state, or not even give, it's not even about give. They could have a state. The world wants them to have a state. But I don't think it can come on the heels of the death of the Jewish state, which is pretty much what Hamas wants. Now, I know there's going to be a zillion comments yelling at me for all kinds of things, and I'm going to be called all kinds of mean words. I hope you understand that everything I said there was coming from a place of I want peace. I want there to be two states. If the Arab world would jump into the world of modernity, is that a word?
Sure.
If they would become modern and care and do the things that would lead to a civilized state, we could have peace in 6 months. Israel didn't leave Gaza so that they could be back there 9 years later having to fight a war. I mean, that's just not logical. Okay, so how was that? Was that pretty good? I normally don't talk that much. Here we go. Now, is this ever going to stop? Malcolm?
Well, first thing I didn't realize until I looked at the map that you showed that Israel is the Delaware of the Middle East. That poor Delaware never gets its own. There's no room for it, and Israel, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that the Middle East, the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict is going to be solved, but it's not going to be solved on this show. It's going to be solved on Twitter. Yeah. And that's my assessment.
Clearly it's going to be solved on Twitter.
Because I follow you on Twitter and I monitor all your tweets about it, and I don't follow all the conversations because there are only so many hours in the day, but I assume there's plenty back and forth.
Yeah.
And lately, since the invasion of Gaza, there's been a tremendous uptick in the number of comments you've made about how great it is to be able to block people on Twitter.
Oh yeah, the block button. The block button is the one thing keeping me sane right now. Because actually, I'll have a debate with people. I'm trying not to have debate with anonymous. If you have an anonymous Twitter profile with no name and just a picture, often a Nazi flag.
I don't fight with eggs.
Yeah,
Dave does not fight with an egg.
I don't fight with eggs. I did tweet that. I will not fight with an egg. Well, I'm an elitist. What can I tell you?